Right now, in this very moment, something extraordinary is happening inside your head. Your mind is running 1,000 different programs at once. There's that thing your boss said yesterday that's still bothering you. The groceries you forgot to pick up. That awkward pause in a conversation from 3 weeks ago. Your phone just buzzed, and even though you didn't check it, part of your brain is already wondering what it might be. Here's what most people don't realize. This constant mental storm isn't normal. It's not just how life is. It's a pattern you've accidentally trained yourself into. And the wildest part? You can train yourself right back out of it. I want to share something with you that changed everything for me, and I've watched it transform countless others. The most centered, fulfilled, genuinely happy people you'll ever meet have discovered something most folks spend their whole lives searching for. They've learned to cultivate what I'm going to call a settled mind. Not an empty mind. That's impossible and, honestly, kind of boring. But a mind that knows when to think and when to simply be. A mind that operates from inner stability rather than constant reactive chaos. This isn't some mystical nonsense or meditation cult stuff. This is brain science. This is about the difference between consciously directing your life versus getting yanked around by every thought, feeling, and distraction that crosses your path. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly how to shift from mental chaos to genuine clarity. From anxious scrambling to purposeful action. From scattered and overwhelmed to strategic and calm. The research is crystal clear on this. People who've developed this kind of mental stability make sharper decisions. They build deeper relationships. They accomplish more meaningful goals. And they report significantly higher levels of genuine life satisfaction. They don't collapse under pressure. They don't burn out every 6 months. They don't waste precious mental energy spinning their wheels over things they can't control. Instead, they channel their focus toward what actually matters, and they do it with this calm, focused intensity that produces remarkable results. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think developing a settled mind means forcing themselves to stop thinking or suppressing their emotions. That's like trying to stop ocean waves by yelling at them. It doesn't work, and it just leaves you exhausted and frustrated. The real secret is learning to observe your thoughts without letting them control you, to feel your emotions fully without being swept away by them, to respond to life from a place of conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Chapter 1: The Mental Turbulence. Most people accept as normal. Most people are trapped in what I call the mental turbulence trap, and they don't even know they're stuck. They've gotten so used to the constant internal chatter, the worry loops, and the mental chaos that they genuinely believe this is just what being human feels like. But it's not. It's learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. Let me paint you a picture of what mental turbulence looks like. Maybe you'll recognize yourself in this. You wake up, and before your feet even hit the floor, your mind is already sprinting. What's on the schedule today? Oh no, Did you respond to that message? Why did you phrase that thing that way last week? What if that meeting doesn't go well? You grab your phone and suddenly you're consuming content that has absolutely nothing to do with your actual life or goals. News that makes your stomach tighten. Social media that makes you compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Notifications fragmenting your attention before you've even fully woken up. Throughout the day, your mind bounces from thought to thought like a pinball. You're talking to someone, but half your brain is already planning your next task. You're working on something important, but you keep getting pulled away by messages, alerts, and random thoughts that pop up uninvited. You're spending time with people you love, but you're not really there because your mind is somewhere else entirely. This isn't just uncomfortable. It's literally sabotaging your potential. When your mind is constantly scattered like this, you can't engage in deep thinking. When you can't think deeply, you can't solve complex problems. When you can't solve complex problems, you can't create breakthrough results in your life or work. You end up living reactively, just responding to whatever screams loudest for your attention in the moment, rather than proactively pursuing what genuinely matters to you. The mental turbulence trap has three main components that keep people stuck. First, there's thought dependency. Your brain has become addicted to constant mental activity. Just like someone who needs their coffee fix, your mind craves the next thought, the next worry, the next piece of information. This creates a cycle where silence feels uncomfortable, stillness feels unbearable, and you constantly reach for external stimulation to quiet the internal noise. You can't just sit with yourself anymore. Second, there's emotional amplification. When your mind is turbulent, your emotions get magnified out of proportion. Small setbacks feel like catastrophes. Minor disagreements feel like personal betrayals. Normal, everyday stress feels completely overwhelming. You're not responding to what's actually happening. You're responding to your interpretation of what's happening, which gets distorted through the lens of mental chaos. Third, there's attention fragmentation. Not the clinical disorder, but the modern epidemic of scattered focus. You've trained your brain to constantly jump between tasks, thoughts, and stimuli. This makes sustained, deep focus nearly impossible. You sit down to work on something important, and within minutes, your mind is pulled in 10 different directions. You start reading something meaningful, but you can't stay with it for more than a few minutes. You try to have a real conversation, but you keep reaching for your phone. Here's the truth that most people never realize. They spend their entire lives in this mental prison without ever discovering that the door was never actually locked. They accept mental turbulence as inevitable. They think anxiety is just part of modern life. They believe that a settled mind is only for monks sitting on mountaintops or people who don't have real responsibilities. But they're wrong. The most successful, effective people in the world have learned to escape this prison. They've developed what researchers call cognitive flexibility. They can direct their attention where they want it. They can choose what to think about. They can stay calm under intense pressure because their minds aren't constantly generating stress and worry. This isn't a superpower. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed through intentional practice. Chapter 2. Why your brain actually fights against peace. Your brain wasn't designed for the world you're living in. It was designed for survival in an environment that disappeared thousands of years ago. And this fundamental mismatch is the root cause of most mental suffering. Understanding this isn't just interesting cocktail party knowledge. It's essential for developing a settled mind. Because when you understand why your brain generates mental turbulence, you can start working with it instead of fighting against it. Let's talk about what neuroscientists call the default mode network. This is one of the most important discoveries in brain science. When you're not actively focused on something specific, your brain doesn't actually rest. Instead, it switches into default mode, which essentially becomes a rumination engine. It starts churning out thoughts about the past, worries about the future, and scenarios that may never happen. This network burns about 20% of your total energy, even when you think you're resting. The default mode network evolved as a survival tool. Our ancestors needed to constantly scan for threats, plan for challenges, and learn from past experiences. The person who was always thinking, always planning, always worried about what could go wrong had a better chance of surviving. But in today's world, this constant mental activity isn't just unnecessary. It's counterproductive. Here's what's happening in your brain when you experience mental turbulence. Your amygdala, which is basically your brain's alarm system, is constantly scanning for threats. But in modern life, most threats aren't physical anymore. They're psychological. A challenging email triggers the same stress response as facing a predator. A social media post that makes you feel inadequate activates the same fear circuits as actual danger. Your brain literally can't tell the difference between real danger and perceived threat, so it treats everything as potentially dangerous. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, higher-order thinking, and emotional regulation, gets overwhelmed. When you're constantly in threat detection mode, your prefrontal cortex can't do its job effectively. This is why you feel scattered, why you can't think clearly, why you make poor decisions when you're stressed. Your brain's CEO is being drowned out by your brain's security guard. But here's the fascinating part, and this is where real hope enters the picture. Science has proven that you can literally rewire your brain. This concept is called neuroplasticity, and it means your brain is constantly changing based on how you use it. Every time you practice focusing your attention, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with concentration. Every time you choose calm over anxiety, you reinforce the circuits that support emotional regulation. Every time you observe your thoughts without getting tangled up in them, you develop what scientists call metacognitive awareness. The research on mindfulness and meditation has shown remarkable results. People who practice these approaches for just 8 weeks show measurable changes in brain structure. The areas linked to attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness become denser and more active. The areas connected to stress, anxiety, and rumination become less reactive. You're essentially upgrading your brain's operating system. But here's what most people misunderstand about developing a settled mind. They think it's about stopping thoughts or suppressing emotions. That's like trying to stop waves in the ocean. Thoughts and emotions are natural. The problem isn't that you have them. The problem is that you're controlled by them. The goal isn't to eliminate thoughts. It's to change your relationship with them. Think of your mind like a snow globe. When it's shaken up, everything is chaotic and you can't see clearly. But when you stop shaking it, when you let it settle naturally, everything becomes clear. You don't make the snow disappear. You just stop agitating it. That's what developing a settled mind really means. You're not trying to eliminate thoughts. You're learning to stop constantly stirring up your mental space. The neurological process of developing a settled mind involves strengthening 3 key networks in your brain. First is your attention network, which allows you to focus on what you choose to focus on. Second is your awareness network, which lets you observe your thoughts and emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Third is your regulation network, which gives you the power to respond to situations from a place of choice rather than automatic reaction. When these 3 networks work together harmoniously, you experience what psychologists call flow state. Time seems to shift, either slowing down or speeding up. You're completely absorbed in what you're doing. Distractions fade into the background. You perform at your absolute highest level. This isn't some mystical experience. It's an optimal brain state that can be cultivated through proper training. Chapter 3: The Core Principles That Transform Your Mental Landscape. Positive psychology isn't about pretending everything is wonderful or forcing yourself to think positive. That's toxic positivity, and it doesn't work. Real positive psychology is the scientific study of what makes life genuinely worth living, has identified specific practices and mindsets that lead to authentic well-being, resilience, and peak performance. When you combine these principles with a settled mind, they become exponentially more powerful. The first principle is genuine appreciation, but not the surface-level kind most people practice. True appreciation is a cognitive discipline that literally rewires your brain for positivity. When you regularly practice genuine appreciation, you train your attention to notice what's working in your life instead of constantly fixating on what's wrong. This isn't denial, it's balance. Your brain has a negativity bias that made sense for survival. But in the modern world, this bias creates unnecessary suffering. Neuroscientist Dr. Sarah Chen found that appreciation activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and serotonin. But more importantly, it strengthens neural pathways associated with optimism and resilience. People who practice daily appreciation experience lower levels of stress hormones, better sleep quality, stronger immune function, and improved relationships. They don't ignore problems. They just don't get overwhelmed by them. The second principle is meaning and purpose. People who have a clear sense of why they're alive and what they're working toward experience significantly higher levels of life satisfaction, even when facing difficult circumstances. Dr. James Morrison, a psychiatrist who survived extreme adversity, observed that people who had a strong sense of meaning were more likely to persevere through intense suffering. This principle applies to everyday life as well. When your mind is settled, you can connect with your deeper values and purposes. The mental noise of daily life often drowns out the quiet voice of your authentic self. But when you develop mental clarity, you can hear what really matters to you. This creates what psychologists call intrinsic motivation, which is far more sustainable and fulfilling than chasing external rewards. The third principle is what researcher Dr. Elena Rodriguez calls the development mindset. People with this mindset believe that abilities and intelligence can be cultivated through effort and learning. They see challenges as opportunities for growth, failures as valuable feedback, and obstacles as training grounds. This isn't just optimistic thinking. It's a fundamental difference in how they process experiences. With a settled mind, you can observe your thoughts about challenges without being overwhelmed by them. You can feel the discomfort of growth without running away from it. You can receive feedback without taking it as a personal attack. This allows you to learn and adapt faster than people who are constantly defending their ego or avoiding difficult situations. The fourth principle is connection and relationship. Humans are fundamentally social beings, and the quality of our relationships is one of the strongest predictors of life satisfaction. But building deep, meaningful relationships requires presence, empathy, and emotional regulation, all of which are enhanced by a settled mind. When your mind is constantly racing, you can't be fully present with other people. You're thinking about your next response instead of really listening. You're distracted by your own worries instead of tuning into their emotional state. A settled mind allows you to be genuinely present, which is one of the greatest gifts you can give another person. The fifth principle is resilience, which is your ability to bounce back from setbacks, adapt to change, and grow stronger through challenges. Resilience isn't about being tough or suppressing emotions. It's about developing a stable inner foundation that remains solid regardless of external circumstances. A settled mind is the foundation of true resilience. When you're not overwhelmed by mental turbulence, you can think clearly during crisis. You can access your problem-solving abilities when you need them most. You can remain calm and centered, which allows you to make better decisions and inspire confidence in others. These 5 principles work together synergistically. Appreciation enhances your sense of meaning. A development mindset strengthens your resilience. Strong relationships provide support for continued growth. And all of these elements together create what ancient philosophers called eudaimonia, which means flourishing or living well. But here's the key insight, and this is crucial to understand. These positive psychology principles are much easier to practice when your mind is settled. It's hard to feel genuine appreciation when you're anxious. It's difficult to maintain a development mindset when you're overwhelmed. It's challenging to build deep relationships when you're distracted. This is why developing a settled mind isn't just about inner peace for its own sake. It's about creating the optimal internal conditions for human flourishing. Think about it this way. Your mind is like the foundation of a house. If the foundation is shaky, It doesn't matter how beautiful the rooms are or how nice the furniture is. Everything is unstable. But when the foundation is solid, you can build something truly extraordinary on top of it. That's what we're doing here. We're building a solid foundation of mental stability and emotional clarity. And on that foundation, you can build the life you actually want to live. Not the life you think you should want, not the life that looks good on social media, but the life that feels authentically meaningful and fulfilling to you. Chapter 4. The hidden traps that keep you stuck in mental chaos. Even when people understand how important it is to develop a settled mind, most of them fail. Not because they're weak or lack discipline, but because they fall into predictable traps. These aren't character flaws, they're natural responses to our modern environment. But being aware of these traps is the first step to avoiding them, and understanding how to escape them is essential for genuine transformation. The first trap is what I call stimulation dependency. Your brain has become dependent on constant mental activity, and like any dependency, withdrawal feels deeply uncomfortable. When you first try to settle your mind, you're going to feel restless, maybe bored, possibly even anxious. Your brain will generate thoughts like, "This is pointless," "I have too much to do," or "Something important might be happening that I'm missing." This isn't a sign that developing a settled mind isn't for you. It's actually a sign that you need it desperately. Here's how the stimulation trap works. You've trained your brain to constantly seek the next hit of information, entertainment, or mental activity. Social media, news feeds, podcasts, streaming services, work emails, random thoughts about the future. All of these provide microdoses of stimulation that temporarily quiet your mind, but ultimately make it more dependent on external sources of engagement. Breaking free from stimulation dependency requires what I call graduated mental fasting. Just like you wouldn't run a marathon without training, you can't expect to sit in complete silence for an hour if you've been constantly stimulated for years. Start with just 5 minutes of intentional quiet time. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just sit and observe what happens in your mind. Notice the resistance. Notice how your brain generates thoughts to pull you back into stimulation. Don't fight these thoughts. Just observe them like you're watching clouds pass by. Gradually increase this time. 5 minutes becomes 10. 10 becomes 15. What you're doing is retraining your brain to be comfortable with its own company. You're teaching it that silence isn't threatening. It's actually restorative. This process takes time, usually several weeks, but the results are genuinely transformative. People who successfully break free from stimulation dependency report dramatically improved focus, creativity, and decision-making ability. The second trap is perfectionist paralysis. Many people believe they need perfect conditions to develop a settled mind. They think they need a special meditation space, the right cushion, complete silence, or a specific amount of time. This perfectionist thinking becomes an excuse to never actually start. They're waiting for the perfect moment that never arrives. The truth is, you can develop a settled mind anywhere, anytime, in any conditions. The goal isn't to eliminate all external distractions. It's to develop internal stability that remains solid regardless of circumstances. Some of the most profound moments of mental clarity happen in chaotic environments, because that's when the skill is most needed and most developed. To escape perfectionist paralysis, embrace what I call imperfect practice. Practice developing a settled mind while waiting in line at the grocery store, during your commute, before important meetings, right in the middle of stressful situations. The more you practice in imperfect conditions, the stronger your mental stability becomes. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Create them internally, right where you are. The third trap is emotional resistance. When your mind starts to settle, suppressed emotions often surface. This is completely normal and actually healthy. But many people mistake this for evidence that they're doing something wrong. They think developing a settled mind should immediately feel peaceful and pleasant. So when difficult emotions arise, they abandon the practice altogether. Here's what's really happening. Mental noise often serves as a distraction from uncomfortable emotions. When you stop the constant mental chatter, you create space for feelings that have been pushed down or ignored. This is your emotional system cleaning itself out, like your body detoxifying when you stop consuming junk food. The key is to welcome these emotions without drowning in them. Feel them fully, acknowledge them, but don't let them control your actions. This emotional processing is temporary, and on the other side of it is genuine peace. People who push through this phase report significant emotional freedom and resilience that they never imagined possible. The fourth trap is the instant results expectation. We live in a culture of instant everything, and many people expect developing a settled mind to work the same way. They try it for a few days or weeks, and when they don't see dramatic results, they conclude it doesn't work for them. This is like going to the gym twice and expecting to be fit. Developing a settled mind is exactly like building muscle. The changes happen gradually, often so subtly that you don't notice them day to day. But over weeks and months, the cumulative effect is profound. Your stress levels decrease, your focus improves, your relationships deepen, your decision-making becomes clearer. You become more present, more creative, more resilient. The secret to escaping the instant results trap is to focus on the process, not the outcome. Commit to the practice regardless of how you feel. Track your consistency, not your progress. Celebrate small wins, like completing 5 days in a row. Trust the process even when you can't see immediate results. The people who develop truly settled minds are those who persist through the initial resistance and allow the gradual transformation to unfold naturally. They understand that real change happens in layers, not in lightning bolts. Understanding these traps doesn't just help you avoid them, it helps you recognize them when they show up and respond skillfully instead of reactively. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to strengthen your practice. Every challenge becomes evidence that you're growing beyond your previous limitations. Chapter 5. Building daily practices that actually work. Developing a settled mind isn't something you do occasionally when you have time or feel stressed. It's something you build into the architecture of your daily life. Most people think about mental training the way they think about exercise, something you do for 30 minutes and then forget about. But your mind is active all day long, which means your mental training must be woven into everything you do. The foundation of daily mental architecture is what I call anchor moments. These are specific times throughout your day when you intentionally return to the present moment and reconnect with mental clarity. The goal isn't to be in a meditative state all day long. That's unrealistic and honestly unnecessary. It's to have reliable points of stability that you can access whenever you need them. Your first anchor moment happens before you even get out of bed. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone or jumping into mental planning mode, spend 2 to 3 minutes connecting with your breath and setting an intention for the day. This isn't about positive affirmations or trying to control everything. It's about starting your day from a place of conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. You're telling your nervous system that you're in control, not your environment. Many people skip this step because they feel rushed or think they don't have time. But this is exactly backwards. The more rushed you feel, the more important this anchor becomes. 3 minutes of intentional calm at the beginning of your day can save you hours of scattered thinking and reactive behavior later. The second anchor moment happens during your morning routine. Whether you're showering, eating breakfast, or drinking coffee, choose one routine activity and do it with complete presence. Feel the water on your skin. Actually taste your food. Notice the warmth of your coffee cup in your hands. This trains your brain to find peace and meaning in ordinary moments rather than constantly seeking stimulation from external sources. Throughout your workday, create micro-anchor moments. Before you check email, take 3 conscious breaths. Before you enter a meeting, spend 30 seconds centering yourself. Before you make an important decision, pause and access your inner clarity. These moments are so brief that they don't interfere with productivity, but they accumulate throughout the day to create a foundation of mental stability. The evening anchor is particularly important because it determines the quality of your sleep and your mental state the next morning. Instead of scrolling through your phone or watching stimulating content right before bed, spend 10 to 15 minutes in quiet reflection. Review your day without judgment. Acknowledge what went well. Notice what you learned. Release any mental tension you're carrying. But anchor moments are just the foundation. The real architecture of a settled mind involves how you handle the inevitable challenges and disruptions that occur throughout the day. This is where most people's practice falls apart. They can be calm in perfect conditions, but as soon as real stress hits, they revert to old patterns of mental chaos. The secret is developing what I call response flexibility. Instead of automatically reacting to stressful situations with anxiety, frustration, or overwhelm, You create a small gap between the trigger and your response. In that gap, you access your settled mind and choose how you want to respond. This gap might only last a few seconds at first, but it's enough to change everything. Instead of sending an angry email, you pause and consider your true objective. Instead of getting overwhelmed by a deadline, you access your problem-solving abilities. Instead of taking someone's behavior personally, you respond from a place of clarity and compassion. Building response flexibility requires practicing what I call the pause technique. When you notice stress, anxiety, or reactive emotions arising, mentally say, "Pause." Then take a conscious breath. Observe what's really happening without getting caught up in the story your mind is creating. Then proceed from a place of choice rather than reaction. Another crucial element of daily mental architecture is what I call information diet. Just like junk food affects your physical health, junk information affects your mental health. Most people consume information randomly throughout the day, checking news, social media, emails, and entertainment without considering the cumulative effect on their mental state. A settled mind requires being intentional about what information you allow into your consciousness. This doesn't mean avoiding all news or living in a bubble. It means being deliberate about when, how, and why you consume information. Check news and social media at specific times rather than constantly throughout the day. Choose sources that inform rather than inflame. Limit exposure to content that creates anxiety without providing actionable value. The final element of daily architecture is what I call integration practices. These are simple activities that help you process and integrate the experiences of your day rather than accumulating mental residue. This might be journaling, walking in nature, creative expression, or meaningful conversation with someone you trust. The key is having regular practices that help you digest your experiences and maintain mental clarity. People who successfully develop settled minds don't rely on willpower or motivation. They create systems that make mental clarity the natural result of their daily habits. They engineer their environment, their routines, and their responses to support the mental state they want to cultivate. This isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Every anchor moment, every conscious breath, every intentional pause builds your capacity for mental stability and emotional freedom. It's like compound interest for your consciousness. Chapter 6: Maintaining Clarity When Everything Falls Apart. Most people can achieve some level of mental calm when life is going smoothly. But the real test of a settled mind comes when everything is falling apart. When you're facing a major deadline, dealing with relationship conflict, experiencing financial pressure, or navigating health challenges. That's when your mental training either serves you or abandons you. The difference between people who thrive under pressure and those who crumble isn't talent or luck. It's their ability to access mental clarity when they need it most. The first advanced technique is what I call pressure inoculation. Just like vaccines expose you to small amounts of a virus to build immunity, Pressure inoculation involves deliberately practicing mental clarity techniques in progressively challenging situations. Most people only practice when they feel calm and have plenty of time, which means their skills evaporate the moment real stress hits. Start by practicing your anchor moments during minor irritations. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of getting frustrated, use it as an opportunity to practice response flexibility. When someone cuts in front of you in line, instead of getting angry, practice observing your emotional reaction without being controlled by it. When your computer freezes up, instead of losing your mind, practice accessing calm in the middle of chaos. Gradually increase the intensity. Practice maintaining mental clarity during difficult conversations, high-pressure presentations, or emergency situations. The key is not to avoid stress, but to use it as training for your mental stability. Athletes don't become champions by avoiding challenges. They become champions by performing well under pressure. The second advanced technique is reframing in real time. When you're stressed, your brain naturally focuses on everything that could go wrong. This catastrophic thinking creates a downward spiral that makes bad situations worse. Advanced practitioners learn to reframe situations as they're happening, not by denying reality, but by choosing more empowering perspectives. Instead of, "This is a disaster," try, "This is testing my resilience." Instead of, "I can't handle this," try, "This is expanding my capacity to handle anything." Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" try, "What is this teaching me?" This isn't positive thinking. It's strategic thinking. You're choosing thoughts that serve your ability to respond effectively rather than thoughts that paralyze you. The third technique is what neuroscientists call focused attention under pressure. When you're overwhelmed, your attention fragments. You start thinking about 10 things at once, none of them clearly. Advanced practitioners learn to narrow their focus to what's most important in the moment while maintaining awareness of the bigger picture. This requires what I call tactical attention management. In any stressful situation, ask yourself 3 questions. What's the most important thing right now? What can I actually control in this moment? What would my wisest self do? These questions cut through mental noise and direct your attention to productive action rather than unproductive worry. The fourth advanced technique is emotional transformation. Instead of trying to suppress difficult emotions during stressful times, you learn to transform their energy into fuel for peak performance. Anxiety can become focused energy. Anger can become determination. Fear can become careful attention. Frustration can become motivation. This transformation happens through a process I call emotional surfing. Instead of fighting against difficult emotions or drowning in them, you learn to ride them like a surfer rides a wave. You feel the emotion fully, acknowledge its message, extract any useful information it contains, and then channel its energy toward constructive action. For example, when you feel anxiety about a deadline, instead of trying to calm down completely, use the energy of that anxiety to fuel intense focus and productivity. When you feel anger about an injustice, use that energy to take powerful action rather than just complaining. When you feel fear about a challenge, use that energy to prepare more thoroughly and perform more carefully. The fifth technique is what I call systems thinking under pressure. When most people face complex challenges, they get overwhelmed by all the moving parts and variables. They try to solve everything at once, or they freeze because the problem seems too big. Advanced practitioners break complex situations into manageable components and address them systematically. This involves what I call pressure compartmentalization. You mentally separate urgent from important, controllable from uncontrollable, and immediate from long-term. You handle each category differently. Urgent and important gets immediate attention. Important but not urgent gets scheduled. Urgent but not important gets delegated or eliminated. Neither urgent nor important gets ignored completely. The sixth advanced technique is energy management during crisis. Most people exhaust themselves during challenging periods by staying in constant high alert mode. They burn through their mental and emotional resources quickly, which makes them less effective when they need to be at their best. Advanced practitioners learn to pulse their energy, alternating between periods of intense focus and brief recovery. Even during the most demanding situations, they take micro breaks to restore their mental clarity. This might be 30 seconds of deep breathing between meetings, a 2-minute walk between tasks, or simply closing their eyes and centering themselves before important decisions. These tiny recoveries prevent burnout and maintain peak performance over extended periods. The seventh technique is what I call clarity anchoring. This involves having a specific mental routine that you can use to instantly access your settled mind state regardless of external circumstances. It's like having a reset button for your consciousness that works anywhere, anytime. Your clarity anchor might be a specific breathing pattern, a meaningful phrase you repeat silently, a physical gesture that reminds you of your inner stability, or a brief visualization that connects you to your deepest sense of purpose. The key is practicing this anchor so consistently that it becomes an automatic response to stress rather than something you have to remember to do. People who master these advanced techniques don't just survive high-pressure situations. They actually thrive in them. They make their best decisions when stakes are highest. They stay creative when others panic. They inspire confidence when others lose hope. They turn obstacles into opportunities and setbacks into comebacks. And here's what's beautiful about this. You don't need to be naturally talented or gifted to develop these skills. You just need to be willing to practice consistently and trust the process even when it feels challenging. Chapter 7. The Transformation Power of Deep Appreciation. Appreciation is the most powerful tool in positive psychology, but most people practice it completely wrong. They think appreciation means making a list of things they're thankful for, or pretending everything is wonderful. Real appreciation is a sophisticated mental technology that literally rewires your brain's default settings from scarcity to abundance, from problems to possibilities, from what's missing to what's present. The neuroscience of appreciation is genuinely remarkable. When you practice genuine appreciation, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the same neurochemicals that antidepressants try to increase artificially. But unlike medication, appreciation creates lasting changes in brain structure. Regular appreciation practice increases gray matter in areas associated with learning, memory, and emotional regulation, while decreasing activity in the brain's stress centers. Dr. Marcus Thompson, one of the world's leading researchers on appreciation, found that people who practice daily appreciation experience 25% higher levels of happiness, 10% more optimism, better sleep quality, stronger immune function, and more satisfying relationships. They also exercise more consistently, make better food choices, and engage in healthier life decisions overall. Appreciation isn't just a nice feeling, it's a performance enhancer for every area of life. But here's where most people go wrong. They practice surface-level appreciation, simply listing obvious things like health, family, or having a roof over their head. While these are genuinely worth appreciating, surface appreciation doesn't create the profound neurological changes that transform your mental landscape. You need to practice what I call deep appreciation, which involves finding genuine gratitude for things that initially seem neutral or even negative. Deep appreciation starts with noticing the ordinary moments you usually take for granted. The fact that you can read these words means your visual system is performing millions of complex calculations every second. The fact that you can understand language means your brain is accessing a sophisticated database of meaning and memory. The fact that you woke up this morning means billions of cellular processes worked perfectly while you slept. When you start recognizing the miraculous nature of ordinary experiences, your baseline level of appreciation rises. You stop taking life for granted and start recognizing that even your most routine day contains countless gifts that most people throughout history could only dream of. Clean water from a tap. Instant communication with people across the world. Access to the sum of human knowledge in your pocket. Advanced appreciation practice involves finding genuine gratitude for your challenges and difficulties. This isn't about pretending that problems are good or that suffering is pleasant. It's about recognizing that difficulties develop your character, build your resilience, and teach you lessons you couldn't learn any other way. Every obstacle you've overcome has made you stronger. Every failure has taught you something valuable. Every difficult person has shown you something about yourself. Every setback has redirected you towards something better, even if you couldn't see it at the time. This doesn't mean you should seek out suffering, but it means you can extract value and meaning from whatever challenges life presents. The most powerful form of appreciation is what I call forward-looking gratitude. This involves feeling genuine appreciation for positive outcomes before they happen. Instead of waiting for good things to occur before feeling grateful, you cultivate appreciation for opportunities, possibilities, and potential futures. For example, instead of just being grateful after you achieve a goal, practice appreciation for the opportunity to pursue meaningful goals in the first place. Instead of just appreciating good health after you recover from illness, practice gratitude for your body's incredible capacity to heal itself. Instead of just feeling thankful for supportive relationships when others help you, practice appreciation for the human capacity for love and connection. Forward-looking gratitude isn't wishful thinking or toxic positivity. It's recognizing that life is constantly offering you opportunities for growth, learning, and contribution. When you appreciate these opportunities before they fully manifest, you become more likely to recognize them when they appear, and more motivated to act on them effectively. Another advanced appreciation technique is what I call value mining. This involves deliberately looking for aspects of difficult situations that you can genuinely appreciate. When you're stuck in traffic, appreciate the opportunity to listen to something educational or practice patience. When you're dealing with difficult people, appreciate the opportunity to develop emotional regulation and interpersonal skills. When you're facing financial challenges, appreciate the motivation to become more resourceful and creative. This isn't about being thankful for problems themselves. It's about being resourceful enough to find value in whatever circumstances you encounter. Champions don't just succeed when conditions are perfect. They find ways to benefit from imperfect conditions. They extract gold from whatever ore life provides. The daily architecture of appreciation involves specific practices that compound over time to create lasting changes in your mental landscape. Start each morning by identifying 3 specific things you appreciate about the coming day. These shouldn't be generic statements, but detailed observations about particular opportunities, experiences, or possibilities. Practice moment-to-moment appreciation by noticing small pleasures and conveniences you usually overlook. The taste of fresh water, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the efficiency of technology that would seem like magic to people just a century ago, the kindness of strangers, the beauty of nature right outside your window, the comfort of shelter. These micro-appreciations train your brain to notice abundance rather than scarcity. End each day by reviewing what went well and extracting lessons from what didn't. Find something valuable in both your successes and your setbacks. Appreciate your growth, your learning, your relationships, and your progress toward meaningful goals. This evening appreciation practice primes your subconscious mind to process experiences positively while you sleep. The ultimate goal of appreciation practice isn't to feel good all the time. That's unrealistic and honestly not even desirable. The goal is to develop what researchers call an appreciative orientation. This means your default mental setting becomes noticing what's working, what's possible, and what's valuable, rather than fixating on what's wrong, what's missing, or what's threatening. When you combine appreciation with a settled mind, the power becomes exponentially greater. Mental turbulence makes it hard to appreciate anything because you're too distracted by worry and rumination. But when your mind is clear and present, you can fully experience the depth and richness of life that appreciation reveals. You don't just think grateful thoughts. you embody a grateful way of being in the world. Chapter 8. Flow States and Peak Performance. Flow state is the ultimate expression of a settled mind in action. It's that experience of being completely absorbed in an activity where time seems to disappear, self-consciousness fades away, and you perform at your absolute best. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists call it inspiration. Entrepreneurs call it being on fire. Scientists call it optimal experience. Whatever you call it, flow state represents the perfect marriage between mental clarity and peak performance. Psychologist Dr. Andreas Fischer identified flow state through decades of research with high performers across every field imaginable. He found that flow experiences share common concentration, complete concentration on the task at hand, clear goals with immediate feedback, perfect balance between challenge and skill level, merging of action and awareness, loss of self-consciousness, transformation of time perception, and intrinsic motivation. But here's what most people don't understand about flow. It's not a random occurrence that happens to lucky people. Flow is a learnable skill that emerges from specific conditions you can deliberately create. When you combine a settled mind with positive psychology principles, you create the optimal conditions for flow to arise consistently rather than occasionally. The first flow trigger is what researchers call the challenge-skill sweet spot. Flow occurs when you're engaged in activities that are challenging enough to demand your full attention, but not so difficult that they create anxiety. Most people spend their lives in activities that are either too easy, which creates boredom, or too difficult, which creates stress. Flow exists in that sweet spot between these extremes. A settled mind allows you to accurately assess both the challenge level of situations and your current skill level. Mental turbulence distorts perception, making easy things seem harder and hard things seem impossible. When your mind is clear, you can find the challenge-skill balance more easily and adjust your approach to maintain flow conditions. The second flow trigger is clear goals with immediate feedback. Your brain needs to know what it's trying to achieve and whether it's succeeding. Vague goals create confusion, which breaks flow. Delayed feedback creates uncertainty, which also disrupts the flow state. The most flow-inducing activities provide continuous information about your performance. Positive psychology enhances this trigger through what researchers call authentic goal setting. Instead of pursuing goals imposed by others or driven purely by external rewards, you focus on objectives that align with your deepest values and interests. When your goals are intrinsically meaningful, your brain releases more dopamine, which enhances focus and motivation naturally. The third flow trigger is complete concentration on the present moment. Flow only occurs when you're fully absorbed in what's happening right now, rather than thinking about past or future. This is where settled mind training becomes absolutely essential. Most people can't sustain focused attention for more than a few minutes before their mind wanders to other concerns. Advanced flow practitioners develop what I call selective attention mastery. They can choose what to focus on and maintain that focus despite distractions. This isn't about forcing concentration through sheer willpower. It's about training attention like you would train any other skill through consistent practice. The more you practice directing your attention intentionally, the easier it becomes to enter and maintain flow states. The fourth flow trigger is the disappearance of self-consciousness. In flow, you stop monitoring how you look, what others think, or whether you're performing perfectly. That inner critic goes quiet, and you become completely absorbed in the activity itself. This is one of the most liberating aspects of flow and why people become genuinely addicted to these experiences in healthy ways. A settled mind naturally reduces self-consciousness because you're not constantly generating thoughts about yourself and your performance. When mental noise decreases, self-awareness paradoxically increases, but it becomes objective rather than judgmental. You notice what's happening without creating stories about what it means or how you're being perceived. The fifth flow trigger is intrinsic motivation. Flow occurs most easily when you're engaged in activities you find inherently rewarding, rather than activities you're doing purely for external rewards. This is where positive psychology principles become crucial. When you understand your core values, strengths, and genuine interests, you can design your life around activities that naturally generate flow. People who experience flow regularly don't just stumble into it by accident. They deliberately engineer their environment and activities to maximize flow conditions. They seek out optimal challenges. They create clear goals with immediate feedback. They eliminate unnecessary distractions. They focus on intrinsically meaningful work. The relationship between flow and performance is genuinely profound. In flow state, your brain operates differently than normal. The prefrontal cortex, which usually creates self-doubt and overthinking, partially deactivates. Meanwhile, areas associated with pattern recognition, creativity, and skill execution become hyperactive. You literally think faster, see patterns more clearly, and perform better than your normal state. But flow isn't just about peak performance in specific activities. It's about living with greater engagement and life satisfaction. People who experience flow regularly report higher levels of overall life satisfaction, better relationships, improved health outcomes, and a stronger sense of meaning and purpose. Flow is simultaneously a performance state and a well-being state. The practical application of flow principles involves redesigning your daily activities to include more flow opportunities. This might mean seeking more challenging projects at work, learning new skills that stretch your abilities, engaging in creative pursuits that absorb your attention, or participating in sports and physical activities that require complete focus. You can also create microflow experiences throughout your day. Any activity can become flow-inducing if you approach it with the right mindset. Washing dishes becomes meditative when you focus completely on the sensory experience. Walking becomes transcendent when you pay full attention to the rhythm and movement. Even routine work tasks can generate flow when you set clear goals, seek immediate feedback, and maintain complete concentration. The integration of a settled mind and positive psychology creates what I call sustained flow capacity. Instead of occasional peak experiences that feel random and unpredictable, you develop the ability to access flow-like states regularly and reliably. Your baseline level of engagement rises significantly. You become more present, more focused, more creative, and more effective. Everything you do. Chapter 9. Building Resilience Through Mental Stability. The path to developing a settled mind isn't a straight line, and expecting it to be sets you up for unnecessary frustration and potential abandonment of the practice. Everyone who has developed genuine mental mastery has faced periods of doubt, apparent regression, and what feels like failure. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up isn't that successful people don't experience setbacks. It's that they understand setbacks are part of the process and know how to navigate them skillfully. The first type of setback is what I call the honeymoon drop. When people first start practicing settled mind techniques, they often experience rapid initial improvement. Their stress decreases noticeably. Their focus improves. Their relationships get better. This early success creates optimism and motivation, which feels amazing. But then, usually after a few weeks or months, they hit a plateau or even seem to regress. Suddenly, the practices don't seem to work as well. They feel more anxious, more scattered, or more emotionally reactive than before they started. This drop isn't a sign that the practice isn't working. It's actually evidence that it is working in deeper ways. Your brain is rewiring itself, which means old patterns are being disrupted before new patterns are fully established. It's exactly like renovating a house. Things get messier before they get better. During this phase, you might feel more anxious, more scattered, or more emotionally reactive than before you started practicing. This is temporary and necessary. The key to navigating the honeymoon drop is understanding that it's a natural part of the growth process. Your nervous system is releasing stored stress and old trauma. Suppressed emotions are surfacing to be processed and integrated. Your brain is forming new neural pathways while old ones are weakening. This process can feel uncomfortable, but it's a sign of healing and genuine growth happening at deeper levels. The second type of setback is triggered regression. Major life stresses like job loss, relationship problems, health challenges, or family crises can temporarily override your mental training. During these periods, you might find yourself reverting to old patterns of anxiety, overwhelm, or reactive behavior, despite months or years of dedicated practice. This doesn't mean you've lost your progress or that your training was worthless. It means you're human, and even well-trained minds can be temporarily overwhelmed by extreme circumstances. The crucial difference is that your recovery time is much faster than it would have been without training. Where you might have been stuck in reactive patterns for weeks or months before, you now recover your equilibrium in days or even hours. The third type of setback is motivation fatigue. After practicing for an extended period, some people lose enthusiasm for their mental training. The practices that once felt meaningful start feeling routine or boring. The benefits that once seemed remarkable start feeling normal and expected. This is similar to what happens in long-term relationships or careers, where familiarity can breed complacency. Motivation fatigue is often a sign that you need to evolve your practice rather than abandon it. This might mean exploring new techniques, setting more challenging goals, or finding ways to deepen your understanding. Advanced practitioners regularly refresh their practice to maintain engagement and continue growing. The fourth type of setback is social resistance. As you develop greater mental clarity and emotional stability, you might find that some people in your life react negatively to your changes. They might criticize your practices, question your new boundaries, or pressure you to return to old patterns. This social resistance can create doubt and make you wonder if you're on the right path. Understanding that social resistance is normal and often inevitable helps you navigate it without abandoning your growth. When you change, it affects the dynamics of all your relationships. Some people will genuinely support your evolution. Others will feel threatened by it because it highlights their own lack of growth. Your job isn't to convince everyone else to change. It's to continue your own development while maintaining compassion for those who aren't ready for their own transformation. The psychology of resilience involves developing what researcher Dr. Ibrahim Karim calls anti-fragility. This concept describes systems that don't just survive stress, but actually grow stronger because of it. Anti-fragile people don't just bounce back from setbacks. They use setbacks as fuel for greater strength, wisdom, and capability. Building anti-fragility requires reframing your relationship with difficulty. Instead of seeing setbacks as evidence that you're failing, you learn to see them as information about where you need to grow. Instead of trying to avoid all challenges, you develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever life presents. Instead of seeing struggle as abnormal, you recognize it as the price of growth and transformation that everyone pays. The practical approach to setback navigation involves what I call the RISE protocol. First, recognize what's happening without judgment or harsh self-criticism. Setbacks are normal and temporary, not evidence of personal failure. Second, investigate the underlying causes without getting lost in endless analysis. What triggered this setback? What can you learn from it? Third, strategize your response based on your investigation. What adjustments do you need to make? What support do you need? Fourth, execute your strategy with patience and self-compassion, understanding that recovery takes time. Another crucial element of resilience is maintaining perspective during difficult periods. Setbacks feel permanent when you're in the middle of them, but they're actually temporary disruptions in a longer trajectory of growth. Keeping a practice journal helps you see patterns and progress that aren't obvious day to day. When you can look back and see how far you've actually come, temporary setbacks become less threatening and more manageable. The role of community and support in resilience cannot be overstated. People who successfully navigate setbacks usually have some form of support system, whether that's friends, family, mentors, coaches, or groups of like-minded individuals. Isolation makes setbacks feel more overwhelming and permanent than they actually are. Connection reminds you that you're not alone in your struggles. Self-compassion is perhaps the most important element of resilience. Most people respond to setbacks with harsh self-criticism, which only makes the situation worse. They tell themselves they're weak, they're failing, they're not cut out for this kind of growth. This internal criticism creates additional stress and makes recovery more difficult. Advanced practitioners learn to treat themselves with the same kindness they would offer a good friend facing similar challenges. They acknowledge their suffering without dramatizing it. They recognize their common humanity rather than feeling uniquely flawed. They speak to themselves with encouragement rather than criticism. The ultimate goal isn't to avoid all setbacks, because that's impossible. The goal is to develop the skills and mindset that allow you to navigate them gracefully and extract maximum learning from each experience. Every setback becomes an opportunity to deepen your practice, strengthen your resilience, and prove to yourself that you can handle whatever life presents. Chapter 10. From Beginner to Master. The Lifelong Journey. Developing a settled mind isn't a destination you reach and then maintain effortlessly forever. It's a lifelong journey of continuous growth, deepening awareness, and expanding capacity. The people who achieve true mental mastery understand that this is a practice they'll engage with for the rest of their lives, not a problem they solve once and forget about. The transition from beginner to advanced practitioner involves several key shifts in perspective that fundamentally change how you approach this work. Initially, most people practice settled mind techniques to solve specific problems. They want less anxiety, better focus, improved relationships, or greater success. These are completely valid motivations, but they represent what I call problem-focused practice. You're trying to fix something that feels broken. Advanced practitioners transition to growth-focused practice. They're not just trying to fix what's wrong anymore. They are genuinely committed to developing their full human potential. They practice not because they have to, but because they want to see how far they can evolve. They are curious about the depths of peace, clarity, and wisdom they can access. They are excited about becoming the fullest version of themselves. This shift from problem-focused to growth-focused practice changes everything. Instead of practicing only when you feel stressed or overwhelmed, you practice consistently because you're committed to continuous growth. Instead of using techniques as temporary fixes, you develop them as permanent capacities. Instead of seeing mental training as separate from the rest of your life, you integrate it into everything you do. The second major transition is from self-focused to contribution-focused practice. Initially, settled mind development is naturally centered on your own experience. You're learning to manage your thoughts, regulate your emotions, and improve your performance. This self-focus is necessary and appropriate when you're building foundational skills. But as you mature in practice, your motivation naturally expands to include serving others. You realize that your mental clarity isn't just for your personal benefit. It's for everyone who interacts with you. When you're centered and peaceful, you create a calming influence on others. When you're clear and focused, you make better decisions that benefit your family, your work, and your community. When you're emotionally regulated, you can be more present and supportive for the people in your life. This shift toward contribution creates what researchers call purpose-driven motivation, the drive to contribute to something greater than yourself. This type of motivation is significantly more sustainable and fulfilling than motivation focused only on personal pleasure and comfort. When you're practicing for others as much as yourself, you find deeper reserves of commitment. The third transition is from technique-focused to principle-focused practice. Beginners need specific techniques and structured practices to develop basic skills. They need meditation instructions, breathing exercises, appreciation protocols, and step-by-step systems. This is completely appropriate and necessary for building foundational capacities. Advanced practitioners internalize the principles behind the techniques and apply them fluidly in real-time situations. They don't need to sit in formal meditation to access inner stillness. They don't need structured appreciation practices to appreciate life deeply. They don't need specific breathing exercises to remain calm under pressure. The principles become integrated into their natural way of being. This doesn't mean abandoning formal practices entirely. Even advanced practitioners usually maintain some structured practices for continued growth and maintenance. But they're not dependent on external conditions or specific techniques to access their inner resources. They can tap into that settled mind state anywhere, anytime, regardless of circumstances. The development of mental mastery follows what researchers call the competence progression. First, you're unconsciously unskilled. You don't even know you lack mental clarity skills. Life just feels hard, and you assume that's normal. Then you become consciously unskilled. You realize you need to develop these capacities, which can feel overwhelming. Next, you become consciously skilled. You can access settled mind states when you remember to apply the techniques. This phase requires effort and intention, but it works. Finally, you reach unconscious skill. Mental clarity becomes your natural default state. You don't have to remember to be present, centered, and clear. You don't have to work consciously to stay calm under pressure or focused during challenging tasks. These capacities become automatic responses that arise naturally from your developed character. Building long-term mastery requires what I call practice evolution. Your mental training must continuously evolve to match your growing capacities and changing life circumstances. What works for a beginner may not be challenging enough for someone with years of experience. What's appropriate for someone in their 20s may not be relevant for someone in their 60s. Advanced practice often involves seeking greater challenges and more subtle levels of development. This might mean practicing in more difficult conditions, working with more challenging emotions, or developing more refined capacities like intuitive decision-making or empathic attunement. You're always growing into the next level of mastery. The concept of legacy becomes important in advanced practice. What kind of mental and emotional environment are you creating for the people around you? What are you modeling for your children, your colleagues, your friends? How are you contributing to the collective mental health and well-being of your community? People with developed, settled minds often become what I call peaceful leaders. They don't necessarily hold formal leadership positions, but they influence others through their presence, wisdom, and example. They demonstrate that it's possible to remain calm in chaos, kind in conflict, and clear in confusion. Their very way of being becomes an invitation for others to develop these same capacities. The ripple effects of one person's mental mastery extend far beyond their individual life. A parent who has developed emotional regulation raises children who are more secure and resilient. A manager who has cultivated mental clarity makes decisions that benefit everyone they oversee. A teacher who embodies inner peace creates learning environments where students can genuinely flourish. Creating a personal practice architecture for long-term development involves several interconnected components. First is your core practices, the foundational techniques you maintain regardless of external circumstances. These might include daily meditation, regular reflection, or consistent appreciation practice. These are non-negotiable pillars of your mental health. Second is your challenge practices, techniques you use to continue growing and stretching your capacities. These might involve practicing in difficult conditions, working with advanced teachers, or exploring new dimensions of consciousness. These practices keep you growing rather than plateauing. Third is your integration practices, ways you apply your mental training to real-world situations and relationships. This might include bringing mindfulness to work projects, applying emotional regulation skills in family dynamics, or using settled mind principles in creative endeavors. This is where theory becomes lived wisdom. Fourth is your contribution practices, ways you share your development with others and contribute to collective well-being. This might involve mentoring others, supporting community initiatives, or simply being a consistent source of peace and stability in your circles. This connects your personal growth to something larger than yourself. The ultimate goal of long-term mental mastery isn't personal perfection, which is impossible and, honestly, undesirable. The goal is authentic contribution. You develop a settled mind not to escape the world, but to engage with it more skillfully. You cultivate inner peace not to avoid conflict, but to navigate it more wisely. You build mental clarity not to judge others, but to serve them more effectively. When settled mind development is pursued with this broader perspective, it becomes one of the most meaningful and fulfilling paths a person can follow. You're not just improving your own life, though that's certainly valuable. You're contributing to the evolution of human consciousness and the creation of a more peaceful, wise, and compassionate world. Chapter 11. Transforming Emotions into Wisdom and Power. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. They feel anxious, so they avoid challenges. They feel angry, so they lash out. They feel sad, so they withdraw from life. They feel excited, so they make impulsive decisions they later regret. This emotional reactivity isn't a character flaw or weakness. It's simply a lack of training. Just like you can train your body to be stronger and more resilient, you can train your emotional system to be more intelligent and responsive. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing feelings or pretending you don't have emotions. It's about developing a sophisticated relationship with your emotional life, where you can feel everything fully while being controlled by nothing. This is one of the most powerful applications of a settled mind, because when your thoughts are clear, you can observe your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You create space between feeling and action, and in that space, wisdom emerges. The first principle of emotional mastery is understanding that emotions are information, not commands. Every emotion you experience is your nervous system's way of communicating important data about your environment, your needs, your values, and your goals. Anger tells you that a boundary has been crossed. Fear alerts you to potential threats. Sadness signals that something you value has been lost. Joy indicates that your needs are being met. Most people miss this crucial information because they're too busy reacting to the emotion or trying desperately to make it go away. They treat emotions like problems to solve rather than messages to decode. When you develop a settled mind, you create the mental space necessary to receive these messages clearly and respond to them wisely. The second principle is emotional precision, which is your ability to distinguish between different emotional states with accuracy. Most people have a limited emotional vocabulary. They use vague words like good or bad, happy or sad, stressed or fine. This emotional vagueness makes it impossible to respond appropriately to what you're actually feeling. Advanced emotional mastery involves developing what researchers call high emotional granularity. Instead of just feeling bad, you can distinguish between frustrated, disappointed, anxious, overwhelmed, sad, angry, or confused. Each of these emotions requires a different response and provides different information about what you need. When you can name emotions precisely, you can address them specifically. If you're feeling anxious, you might need to prepare more thoroughly. If you're feeling frustrated, you might need to try a different approach. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you might need to break the task into smaller steps. Precision leads to appropriate action. The third principle is the emotion-action gap. Between feeling an emotion and taking action, there's a small space where choice exists. Most people collapse this gap, moving directly from feeling to action without conscious intervention. They feel angry and immediately send a harsh message. They feel anxious and immediately start avoiding the situation. They feel excited and immediately make impulsive commitments they can't sustain. Emotional mastery involves expanding this gap so you have time to choose your response. This doesn't mean suppressing the emotion or pretending you don't feel it. It means feeling the emotion fully while maintaining enough awareness to choose how you want to respond. This is where the settled mind becomes absolutely essential, because mental turbulence makes it impossible to access this space of conscious choice. The fourth principle is emotional alchemy, the ability to transform emotional energy into constructive action. Every emotion contains energy that can be channeled toward positive outcomes. Anger can become determination to create change. Fear can become careful preparation and heightened attention. Sadness can become compassion and deeper appreciation for what matters. Frustration can become motivation to find better solutions. This transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires what I call conscious emotional processing. When you feel a strong emotion, instead of immediately reacting or trying to suppress it, you pause and ask yourself several questions. What is this emotion trying to tell me? What information does it contain? What action would honor this emotion while serving my highest good? How can I channel this energy constructively? The fifth principle is emotional regulation under pressure. It's relatively easy to maintain emotional balance when life is going smoothly. Real mastery is demonstrated when you're facing difficult circumstances. This requires developing what neuroscientists call cognitive control, the ability to override automatic emotional responses and choose more skillful reactions. Advanced practitioners train their emotional regulation skills progressively, starting with small irritations and building up to major challenges. They practice maintaining their center during traffic jams, difficult conversations, unexpected setbacks, and high-pressure situations. This training builds what I call emotional fitness, the capacity to remain clear and responsive even when emotions are running high. The sixth principle is emotional contagion awareness. Emotions are highly contagious. When you're around anxious people, you tend to become anxious. When you're with excited people, you tend to become excited. When you're near angry people, you tend to become defensive or aggressive. Most people are completely unconscious of this emotional contagion and get swept along by whatever emotional currents surround them. Emotional mastery involves developing what I call emotional sovereignty, the ability to maintain your own emotional state regardless of what others are feeling. This doesn't mean being cold or disconnected. It means being able to empathize with others' emotions without being controlled by them. You can be present with someone's pain without drowning in it. You can witness someone's anger without becoming reactive yourself. You can offer support without taking on their emotional burden. The seventh principle is emotional integration, which involves learning from your emotional experiences rather than just enduring them. Every strong emotion you experience contains lessons about your values, your needs, your boundaries, and your growth edges. When you approach emotions with curiosity rather than resistance, they become teachers rather than obstacles. This requires developing what I call emotional intelligence in action. After experiencing strong emotions, you reflect on what triggered them, what they revealed about you, and how you can respond more skillfully in the future. You treat your emotional life as a laboratory for developing wisdom and compassion rather than just something to survive. The practical application of emotional mastery involves daily practices that strengthen your emotional intelligence and regulation skills. This includes regular emotional check-ins where you notice and accurately name what you're feeling. It involves practicing the pause between feeling and action. It includes working with challenging emotions through conscious processing rather than avoidance or reactivity. When you develop true emotional mastery, you become what I call an emotional alchemist. You can transform any feeling into fuel for positive action. You can remain centered in chaos, compassionate in conflict, and clear in confusion. Your emotions become allies in your growth rather than obstacles to your success. They provide valuable information and powerful energy that you can direct toward meaningful purposes. Chapter 12. Transforming every relationship through inner stability. Your relationships are the ultimate test of your inner development. You can meditate for hours, practice appreciation religiously, and maintain perfect composure when you're alone. But the moment you interact with other people, especially those closest to you, your real level of consciousness is revealed. This is why conscious relationship skills are essential for anyone serious about developing a settled mind and living from positive psychology principles. Most relationship problems aren't actually relationship problems. They're consciousness problems. When two unconscious people interact, they trigger each other's unresolved issues, defensive patterns, and reactive behaviors. They project their internal chaos onto each other and wonder why their connections feel difficult and draining. But when even one person in a relationship develops genuine inner stability, the entire dynamic can transform dramatically. You become a stabilizing force rather than another source of chaos. The foundation of conscious relationships is what I call presence-based connection. Instead of trying to get something from others, impress them, fix them, or control them, you focus on being fully present with them. This quality of presence is rare in our distracted world. And when people encounter it, they feel seen, heard, and valued in a way that transforms the entire interaction. Presence-based connection requires several key elements. First is complete attention management. When you're with someone, you give them your full attention. You're not thinking about your next response, checking your phone, or planning what you'll do later. You're completely absorbed in the experience of being with them. This kind of attention is so rare that it feels like a precious gift to whoever receives it. Second is emotional attunement. You tune into the other person's emotional state and match your energy to what the situation requires. If they're excited, you share genuinely in their enthusiasm. If they're grieving, you create space for their sadness. If they're anxious, you offer calm stability. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally reactive yourself. It means being emotionally responsive in ways that serve connection and understanding. Third is curiosity over judgment. Instead of immediately evaluating what people say or do, you approach them with genuine curiosity about their experience, their perspective, and their inner world. You ask questions designed to understand rather than questions designed to prove your point. You listen to learn rather than listening to respond or defend. The second pillar of conscious relationships is intentional communication. Most people communicate unconsciously, saying whatever comes to mind without considering the impact of their words. They dump their emotions on others, criticize without offering solutions, or speak in ways that create defensiveness and disconnection. Conscious communication involves several advanced skills. First is speaking from choice rather than reaction. Before you speak, especially about sensitive topics, you pause and consider what you're trying to achieve. Are you speaking to express yourself authentically, to understand the other person, to solve a problem, or to create deeper connection? This clarity of intention shapes how you communicate. Second is using language that creates safety rather than threat. You speak about your own experience rather than making statements about the other person's character. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you say, "I feel unheard when we have these conversations." Instead of, "You're being defensive," you say, "I notice some tension between us, and I'd like to understand what's happening." Third is timing and emotional intelligence. You recognize when someone is too emotionally activated to have a productive conversation, and you wait for a better moment. You pay attention to nonverbal cues and adjust your approach accordingly. You understand that what you say is less important than how the other person receives it, so you communicate in ways they can actually hear. The third pillar of conscious relationships is boundary intelligence. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that help relationships flourish. They define what you will and won't accept, what you need to feel safe and respected, and how you want to be treated. Clear boundaries actually create more genuine intimacy, not less, because they allow people to relax and be themselves. Most people struggle with boundaries because they confuse boundaries with barriers. A barrier is rigid and defensive. "I won't discuss this topic ever." A boundary is flexible and protective. "I'm not available to discuss this topic when either of us is upset, but I'm happy to talk about it when we can both approach it calmly." Setting conscious boundaries requires several skills. First is clarity about your own needs, values, and limits. You can't set appropriate boundaries if you don't know what you actually need. Second is the ability to communicate these boundaries clearly and kindly without over-explaining or apologizing for having them. Third is the willingness to maintain your boundaries even when others don't like them, which requires genuine self-respect. The fourth pillar is conflict transformation. Most people either avoid conflict entirely or engage in it destructively. Conscious relationship practitioners see conflict as valuable information about mismatched needs, different values, or communication breakdowns. They approach conflict with curiosity rather than defensiveness, seeking to understand rather than to win. Conflict transformation involves several advanced skills. First is the ability to stay centered when others are emotionally activated. You don't take their reactivity personally, and you don't get pulled into reactive patterns yourself. Second is the skill of finding the underlying needs beneath people's positions. When someone is angry about something specific, You look for the deeper need that isn't being met. Third is creative problem solving that honors everyone's core needs. Instead of compromising where everyone loses something, you seek solutions where everyone's most important needs are genuinely met. This requires thinking beyond obvious solutions and being willing to try new approaches that might feel uncomfortable at first. The fifth pillar is conscious appreciation in relationships. Most people take their relationships for granted and focus primarily on what's not working. Conscious practitioners regularly acknowledge what they appreciate about others and express genuine gratitude for the value others bring to their lives. This isn't about false positivity or ignoring problems. It's about maintaining a balanced perspective that recognizes both the challenges and the gifts in every relationship. When people feel genuinely appreciated, they're more willing to work through difficulties and more motivated to bring their best selves to the connection. The transformation that occurs when you bring these principles to your relationships is genuinely remarkable. People feel safer around you because you're not trying to control or fix them. Conversations become deeper because you create space for authentic sharing. Conflicts become opportunities for greater understanding rather than battles to be won. Your presence becomes a gift that others actively seek out rather than something they tolerate. Most importantly, your relationships become laboratories for your own growth. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice presence, compassion, and consciousness. The challenges you face with others become mirrors that show you areas where you still need to develop greater wisdom and emotional maturity. Chapter 13. Advanced Mental Training for Consistent Peak Performance. The difference between good performers and truly exceptional performers isn't talent, intelligence, or even hard work. It's the quality of their mental training. Elite athletes, successful entrepreneurs, innovative artists, and outstanding leaders all share one common characteristic. They've developed advanced mental training protocols that optimize their psychological state for peak performance. These protocols go far beyond basic meditation or positive thinking. They involve sophisticated techniques for managing attention, regulating emotions, accessing flow states, and maintaining optimal mental conditions regardless of external pressures. When combined with the principles of a settled mind and positive psychology, these protocols become exponentially more powerful. The first advanced protocol is State Management Mastery. Your mental state determines the quality of your performance more than any other single factor. When you're in an optimal state, you think clearly, make better decisions, access your creativity naturally, and perform at your highest level. When you're in a suboptimal state, even your best efforts produce mediocre results. Most people leave their mental state to chance. They hope they'll feel motivated when it's time to perform, but they have no reliable way to create the state they need. Advanced performers develop specific protocols for accessing optimal states on demand, regardless of how they're feeling or what's happening around them. State management begins with state awareness. You learn to recognize the subtle differences between various mental and emotional states. You notice how you feel when you're in flow versus when you're struggling. You recognize the early warning signs of stress, fatigue, or overwhelm before they derail your performance. The second component is state anchoring. You develop specific rituals, breathing patterns, visualization techniques, physical movements that reliably produce optimal states. These anchors work because they create neurological associations between specific actions and desired mental states. The second advanced protocol is attention architecture. Your ability to direct and sustain attention is the foundation of all peak performance. In our distracted world, the capacity for sustained, focused attention has become a genuine competitive advantage in every field. The third protocol is pressure optimization. Most people see pressure as something to avoid or endure, but elite performers learn to use pressure as fuel for enhanced performance. They understand that optimal performance often requires a certain amount of stress and challenge to activate their full capabilities. Chapter 14: Making Transformation Permanent. Understanding how your brain changes is crucial for making lasting transformation rather than temporary improvement. Most people experience cycles of progress and regression because they don't understand the neurological principles that govern permanent change. The first principle of lasting change is neuroplasticity. Your brain's ability to form new neural pathways and reorganize itself throughout your life. Every time you think a thought, feel an emotion, or take an action, you're literally rewiring your brain. It takes approximately 66 days of consistent practice for a new behavior to become automatic. And it takes much longer for complex psychological changes to become truly permanent. Most people give up during the difficult middle phase when they're no longer seeing rapid progress, but haven't yet reached the point where the new behavior becomes effortless. The second principle is gradual, progressive change rather than dramatic, sudden shifts. Your brain resists rapid change because it perceives it as potentially dangerous. Successful transformation involves making small adjustments that gradually shift your set points without triggering resistance. Chapter 15: Your extraordinary life starts now. You now possess something that most people will never have: a comprehensive understanding of how to develop genuine mental mastery and apply positive psychology principles for lasting life transformation. But knowledge without application is worthless. The quiet mind revolution isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming who you really are underneath all the mental noise, conditioning, and reactive patterns. It's about accessing the calm, clear, wise, and compassionate aspects of yourself that have always existed but have been buried under layers of stress, distraction, and unconscious programming. This transformation begins with a fundamental decision. Will you continue living at the mercy of your thoughts, emotions, and circumstances? Or will you take responsibility for your inner state, regardless of what's happening around you? Your transformation blueprint begins with establishing non-negotiable daily practices. Your morning foundation practice should take 10 to 15 minutes and include connecting with your breath, setting a clear intention for the day, and practicing appreciation for something meaningful in your life. Your daily anchor moments involve brief pauses throughout the day to reconnect with mental clarity and presence. Your evening integration practice involves reviewing your day with compassion and curiosity. The social dimension of your transformation is crucial. You need to either find or create a community of people who support your growth. Remember that not everyone in your life will understand or support your transformation, and that's okay. Your environmental design should support rather than sabotage your transformation. This includes your physical environment, your information diet, and your social circles. The integration phase involves applying your developing skills to real-world challenges and opportunities. How can you use your growing emotional intelligence to improve your relationships? How can you apply your mental clarity skills to your work? How can you leverage your positive psychology practices to support others? The ultimate goal isn't to become perfect or to eliminate all challenges from your life. It's to develop the inner resources that allow you to navigate whatever life presents with wisdom, grace, and resilience. It's to become someone who remains centered in chaos, kind in conflict, and clear in confusion. This transformation creates beneficial ripple effects. Your family benefits from your emotional stability and presence. Your work benefits from your mental clarity and focused attention. Your community benefits from your positive energy and conscious contributions. The research shows that people who successfully develop these capacities report dramatic improvements in life satisfaction, relationship quality, career success, health outcomes, and overall well-being. But beyond these measurable benefits, they experience something much more profound, a sense of authenticity, purpose, and inner freedom that no external circumstances can threaten. Your transformation isn't just about improving your own life, though that's certainly important. It's about contributing to the evolution of human consciousness and the creation of a more peaceful, wise, and compassionate world. Every person who develops genuine mental mastery and emotional intelligence makes it easier for others to do the same. The time for transformation is now. Not when you have more time, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel completely ready. The moment you decide to take your inner development seriously and commit to consistent practice is the moment your life begins to change. Every day you delay is another day of living below your potential and missing opportunities for growth and contribution. You have everything you need to begin this transformation immediately. You understand the principles, you know the practices, and you have access to the most sophisticated technology ever discovered for changing human consciousness: your own mind. The only question remaining is whether you'll use this knowledge or allow it to remain theoretical information that never transforms into practical wisdom. The settled mind revolution starts with you, in this moment, with the next choice you make about how to direct your attention and respond to your circumstances. Will you choose consciousness over unconsciousness, presence over distraction, wisdom over reactivity? Will you join the small percentage of people who actually transform their lives? Or will you remain part of the majority who simply hope things will somehow improve on their own? The choice is yours. Your extraordinary life is waiting on the other side of your commitment to becoming who you really are. The art of a quiet mind, combined with positive psychology, isn't just a practice. It's a way of being. It's a revolutionary approach to human consciousness that has the power to transform not just your life, but the world around you. Start today. Start now. Your settled mind, your extraordinary life, and your fullest potential are calling. All you have to do is answer.